We're here tonight to talk about the Holyoke 141 I-91 interchange at exit 17. Thank you, John. With me tonight are your designers, or MassDot's designers, Niche Engineering, Faisal Hosseini, John Mikulak, Matt Soltis, and our District 2 individuals here representing MassDOT from your district are Bao Lang, the traffic engineer, and Rich Massey, the project development engineer. I'm from Boston, and welcome tonight. Thank you so much for coming out. This is a terrific show. It's astounding, frankly. And we're thrilled to have you. And well, we are. This is the whole point of it. I just want to start at the top by telling you that the whole purpose of tonight's hearing, it's not a hearing, it's a public information meeting. This is, by the way, Walter Mantani. He's works for Arlington Typing and Mailing. He's capturing a verbatim transcript solely for the purpose of helping the designers capture all your comments so that they can respond to them. And they're here tonight to present a roundabout alternative for exit 17. And I think the other facts I need to tell you are that this meeting was advertised in the Republican on August 27th and September 3rd, and the Chicopee Herald on August 30th and September 6th. And we plan to advertise this project for construction in November of 2022, and we're projecting, I think it's programmed on our transportation improvement program for roughly $6 million today. And without further ado, I'm going to toss it off to, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot Eric Christensen. He's our right-of-way representative here to explain the right-of-way process for us, and he's going to do that right now.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening. My name is Eric Christensen, and I represent the Right-of-Way Bureau of the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division. The Right-of-Way Bureau is responsible for acquiring all the necessary rights in private and public lands for the design, construction, and implementation of this project. Affected property owners will be contacted by personnel from the Right-of-Way Bureau or consultants representing the Massachusetts Department of Transportation Highway Division. The procedures used must comply with state and federal regulations governing the acquisition process. The current design plan indicates that fee takings and permanent easements may be required. Other areas will require temporary construction easements. Affected property owners' rights are protected under our Massachusetts General Laws, primary Chapter 79. If a project is receiving federal funds, the property's owner rights are further defined under Title III of the Real Property Acts of 1970 as amended. I will be happy to answer any general questions regarding the right-of-way activities during the open forum for questions. And I will be available after this public hearing for any specific questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't finish my thought, but the most important aspect of tonight's exercise is to capture your thoughts on what we're presenting. So I'm thrilled that you're all here. Nobody knows this better than you, this intersection, this interchange, this area. So your thoughts on good, bad, or indifferent, maybe you're going to be thrilled by what we showed you. But that's why we're here, no other reason. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rich Massey.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rich Massey from the Project Development Office of MassDOT, District 2 office in Northampton. And we're here tonight to present really what is a revised proposal to address traffic issues at I-91, interchange 17 in Holyoke, at its junction with Route 141. This Route 141 corridor has actually been studied going back to 2007 when Pioneer Valley Planning Commission some recommendations on behalf of the city of Holyoke and the city of East Hampton. And we're now looking to do some major changes. Some of the things that have been done in the past that came out of the various studies is the traffic signal at Jarvis Ave and Burns Way. We've made some minor modifications to our traffic signal operations, but tonight we're here to propose really a more substantial change to address the high volume of traffic that uses the exit 17 junction at Route 141. And as Tom said, we really want your input. That's most helpful to us. And I'll turn it over now to our engineer's niche so they can go through the presentation. I think what we'll do is we'll put this presentation on our website after the meeting, so you'll be able to view this. A lot of you probably can't see it very well right now, especially way back in the room. So I'll turn it over now to John Nicolak from Niche.
Okay, thank you, Rich. I'm John Nicolak, Senior Project Manager with Niche Engineering, and I want to thank you all for coming out here tonight. I'll reiterate what Tom said. We look forward to hearing your comments once we finish with our presentation this evening. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but we can't really see.
I'm sorry?
We can't really see. We can
Right.
hear, but we can't see.
This is as dark as we can get the room right now, apparently.
Okay.
We'll try to do our best to describe the slides, and as Rich said, MassDot will post this so you can view the slides later. As Rich mentioned, project location includes Route 141 and interchange 17 of I-91. The project extends from the intersection with Jarvis Avenue, extends down past the on and on ramp to I-91 across from University Park Apartments, and then continues down to the on and on ramps down towards Route 5, terminating at those on and off ramps. We refer to these ramps on and off at Jarvis, south of Jarvis at University Park Apartments as Ramp A and Ramp B. So that just to give you some orientation as we talk about the locations. And then the ramps down on the south end of the project, on and off ramps, are C, D, and E. So this slide shows you the existing traffic pattern today as traffic travels eastbound on I-141. Vehicles can take a left onto ramp B in order to access I-91. Vehicles also travel up ramp A and can take a right or a left onto Route 141. Vehicles can also travel from the eastbound direction, access I-91 southbound from an access ramp referred to as ramp C. And then ramps E and F are the ramps on and off 91 on the east side of I-91. And as Rich talked about the history of this project, we just wanted to go over the different elements that have been studied that bring us to this point today. In June of 2007, a transportation and safety study was prepared by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission and the City of East Hampton and the City of Holyoke. And the result of this study was to recommend a traffic signal timing and lane modifications to Route 141 at the I-91 southbound ramps A and B, which are across from University Park Apartments. In November of 2009, MassDot prepared a functional design report, which is a traffic study, a formal traffic study. And the recommendations of that were to signalize the intersection 141 at Jarvis and create traffic signal coordination with the Route 141, I-91 signal at the southbound ramps of A and B. 2010, some concept plans were presented to MassDOT from the city of Holyoke. And they recommended 3 different concept options be studied further at the interchange at ramps A and B. In June of 2014, MassDOT produced a project status report which outlined these 3 concepts that were presented in May of 2010. Also conducted a field visit on Friday of June 6, 2014, and noted that the Route 141 westbound vehicle queues, the traffic backup, was backing up all the way to what we referred to as ramp E. So the traffic from the intersection here was backing up at some points all the way back down to ramp E, which led them to commission additional traffic studies. So we were then hired to further look at these alternatives, try to come up with a viable alternative, which we presented in September 2017 in a public information meeting that was held at Holyoke Community College. And we had recommended an additional ramp C be constructed so traffic would continue down 141 eastbound and then access I-91 southbound unimpeded. And that was one of the presentations that we had made almost 2 years ago. What we heard at that meeting from the residents of Lindor Heights is that additional traffic traveling southbound, or what we call eastbound on 141, in addition to the traffic that's currently traveling westbound and accessing I-91 from ramp B, would make it even more difficult to pull out from the Lindor Heights neighborhood onto 141. So after that meeting, we've met with MassDOT several times, gone over other concepts, ways to restrict left-bound turn lanes at the intersection of at ramps A and B, and how we can best facilitate traffic without making things worse for the residents that are exiting Lindor Heights. So ultimately, why do we need this project? This question came up earlier when we were looking at the boards before the meeting. So there are many issues that have been identified as a result of the previous traffic studies and from our experience visiting the site and analyzing the traffic data. First most is the traffic operations. On Route 141, the westbound queue can extend all the way down to ramp E, as I mentioned, which was found in one of the earlier studies. Route 141 eastbound, the left turns onto ramp B, so people trying to turn left to get onto I-91 southbound can extend all the way to Jarvis Ave and Burns Way, the intersection of Jarvis and Burns. We also identified vehicle safety as an issue. With the vehicles that are making left turns onto I-91 ramps, as well as the vehicles that are turning left off of I-91 ramps A and B, create a conflict point there where there's a possibility for accidents, for angular accidents, as people are going through that signalized intersection. Another one of the items that was brought up was the geometry, the angle of the driveways at University Park Apartments onto 141. You can see the angle of this driveway isn't very conducive for somebody who wants to try to get down onto the I-91 ramps or turn around in the other direction, which is why there are multiple driveway entrances at University Park Apartments. Another item that was pointed out was the visibility. The visibility of the signals was difficult because of the vegetation. There are no signal backplates, which make signal heads more visible for drivers, especially with solar glare issues. And the vegetation also blocks the signs in addition to the signals. And you can see some of the photos that show that vegetation blocking the signals and the signs in that area. Some of the other issues that were pointed out is there's a lack of bicycle accommodation on this corridor. There's no safe place for bicyclists other than within the travel There's also lacking pedestrian accessibility. There aren't pedestrian ramps or signals or sidewalks at I-91 at A and B, ramps A and B. There's also no sidewalk connecting to Jarvis Ave and Burns Way from the University Park Apartments. There's also no emergency vehicle preemption system, so that signal doesn't have a system that allows emergency vehicles priority so that they can trigger the signal and get through there quicker. I also noted that there's a lack of adequate gaps at Lindor Heights, and that's the space between vehicles that allows people to pull out onto 141 from Lindor Heights. And that vehicles also tend to block Lindor Heights as people are trying to exit. So looking at those existing issues, we've worked with MassDot and developed project goals for us to follow as we try to come up with solutions. One is to improve that intersection safety. We want to reduce those vehicle conflicts that I talked about at the intersection at University Park Apartments, and also improve access to Lindor Heights. We also want to improve highway safety. We want to minimize I-91 northbound off-ramp at ramp E backups that I talked about that extend all the way to ramp E and can actually, in fact, impact travel on I-91 if the backup gets too great. We also have the goal of relieving congestion. There's traffic queuing that happens on Route 141. In the eastbound direction, it extends to Jarvis Ave, and in the westbound direction, it can extend to ramp E. Also, the geometry. We wanted to look at modifying the University Park Apartments driveways and incorporate them better into the signal. We also looked at modifying the intersection at Lindor Heights, and we've got an option here that we're going to present tonight that we're trying to make it easier for people at Lindor Heights to be able to access Route 141. Also improve the visibility, revise the roadway geometry to improve visibility, clear that vegetation, improve the sight lines to the signals and signs. We also want to improve bicycle accommodation. That's a very important mandate of the state now on every project. We want to make roadways usable for all types of users. So we've looked at adding bicycle lanes and shared use paths and incorporating them into this project. Also improving pedestrian accommodations. We need new sidewalks, ADA compliant sidewalks, and new pedestrian ramps to provide accessible accommodations throughout the project area. And we also strive to minimize right-of-way and environmental impacts. We know that there's wetlands in the vicinity, and we want to minimize the right-of-way impacts to private property as much as we can while incorporating all of these improvements. Now we'll turn things over to Faisal, and he'll talk about the traffic.
Thank you very much. My name is Faisal Hussaini. I'm with Mitch Engineering. I hope you can hear me with a little accent here, and so if you cannot understand what I'm saying, I definitely will repeat it. So I've been a traffic engineer for the past 35 years, and definitely in traffic as the basis, we try to eliminate conflict between vehicles to improve safety. And looking at this project area, we have an issue with capacity as well as the geometry and the circulation and safety. That if you look at 114, if you are going we call it westbound, eastbound. If we're going westbound, and the reason why the backup all the way to ramp E and then to I-91 is we have about 1,000 vehicles an hour during the peak hour. And the peak hour is the highest volume during the PM peak, which is the afternoon between the hours of 4 and 6. So for that, in order for us to evaluate the impacts and how we can fix the capacity issue, we count cars. We go in the field, we count the vehicles, and then we look at them, put them in a computer program that do some analysis to us, and then come up with some what we call level of service. Level of service is like you are going to the school. You get a grade from A to F, A is wonderful, and then F is failure. The same thing in traffic. So basically, one lane with more than 1,000 vehicles an hour is really over capacity. So technically that tells us we need more space, more lanes. And that's why you will see that what we're proposing is to add that additional lane in the westbound to increase that capacity and eliminate that queuing or the backup all the way down. That will allow abutters to really have better gap in traffic to exit their property or enter their property. The same thing, we have the eastbound backup into Jarvis Lane. And that backup as well does back up right into the signal. And having the option of a roundabout, that will alleviate that backup as well. The reason being is that if you take a standard intersection and then you take a roundabout, you'll find a very small number of conflicts between vehicles in a roundabout than it is within an intersection. You know, sometimes we look at traffic lights. You know, whenever there's an issue, we say, okay, let's install traffic lights. Traffic lights is not the solution of all ills. Traffic lights can solve the problem if the conditions are right. You know, if we have certain volume of traffic, if we have so many, you know, the right side distance, we have the traffic, the most recent technology, but sometimes it doesn't work everywhere. And in this situation, it was very difficult to get an acceptable level of service for a signalized intersection as for it is for roundabout. And in terms of as you approach a roundabout, you don't have to stop all the time. You have a really nice line of sight of the roundabout, and if there's nobody coming around the roundabout, which is you have the right of way, you can exit. So you don't lose much time. And that's why you can maximize, that's why they say that roundabout can handle more capacity than an intersection. And we take the volumes as they were counted in 2015 and we project them for 10 years. So those are the number we deal with when we do our analysis. And so we projected the volumes to 2025, applying a growth rate which is a standard from MassDot of 1% a year. And so we come up with the volumes of 2025, and we do our analysis based on that. And we do like what we call warrant analysis for a traffic signal, if it's warranted or not warranted. And then other option, when we propose a roundabout, with the analysis, we have the proper software to analyze a roundabout to determine that level of service, if it's good or bad. So the vehicle capacity and on Route 141 and at southbound ramps A and B, which is off 91. And just to go back to that, we really have two interchanges right there within less than half a mile apart that access I-91 southbound. And that's why initially we proposed to close that left lane coming on 141 to turn left and then bring the traffic all the way around. We were looking at it from the point of view is that it's not a long distance to come around to access 91. So you have only one access to I-91 southbound, and we bring the left turns that was coming eastbound on I-141, bring them all the way down to the other ramp, so there would be no interaction between the two sides of traffic. However, the issue of the driveways to the Lindor Heights was not acceptable to them. Again, we talked about the level of service, which is acceptable, which is not acceptable, and we talked about the volume of traffic condition when we did the counts. So basically, if we look at at ramp B, which is the on-ramp to 91 South, the level of service during the peak hour is F. And that's in the morning and the evening, both peak hours, in the morning and in the afternoon. The I-91 westbound approach, if you are going on the west side, there is a level of service C in the morning and then level of service E in the evening. And the overall intersection is F in the morning and is F in the afternoon. So it's really a failing operation at that intersection. Again, our proposal now is to replace that signal line intersection with 2 lanes roundabout. The preference would have been to propose a 1-lane roundabout. The problem is the capacity. We cannot handle the volume of traffic with 1-lane roundabout. So that's why we propose a 2-lane roundabout. However, if you look locally throughout the United States, internationally, not too many 2-lane roundabouts because people don't like to propose them. You see a lot of 1-lane roundabout. Minnesota, for example, they built about 200 roundabouts where they have a small number of 2 lanes and the remaining are 1 lane. Similarly, in Massachusetts, we have been putting roundabouts in many places, which are a single lane roundabout. However, we have a couple 2-lane roundabouts. So John talked about what the improvements are at the Lindor Heights and at the University Park driveways. This is there's a huge difference between a roundabout and a rotary. A lot of people are afraid of driving through a rotary because the travel speed on the rotary is much higher. There is no deflection. As I approach that rotary, I don't see deflection makes me to slow down. So I can just run through it. So until recently, everybody thought if I'm entering the rotary, I have the right of way. But the reality of it, the person within the rotary has the right of way. Because, again, it's not very controlled. However, the roundabout is more controlled. The roundabout does force the vehicle approaching to slow down. It's safer for pedestrians, safer for bicycles. Alongside now, if we are building a system for safe route to school where we can cross people, we can cross bicycles, where we have sidewalks, definitely the roundabout will function way much safer than a rotary. So, not long time ago, we did design a roundabout in Northampton at Conn Street, Route 5. I think many of you are probably familiar with it. And that project was done by MassDot at the time. As you know, the city of Northampton is very supportive of the roundabout. They actually demanded that the roundabout be installed there. And then with the understanding, of the safety consideration and the actually slowing people down and allowing for large vehicles to maneuver around it, like large trucks. Sometimes it's very difficult for large trucks to turn at an intersection. Especially if you want to make that intersection as convenient for pedestrians, because you try to neck down and minimize the crossing distance. However, with the roundabout, it has the radius which allows for the vehicle to turn, and we designed for an apron that the truck can go over it if there's a large truck. And we try to accommodate the largest truck possible. So this is the Conn Street roundabout. Again, it's I was asked the question, how many complaints have you heard about it? And the answer was none. Nothing came to us that there is complaints about it. However, the city did not indicate that there are complaints about it, so I'm not sure if there are. any. All right, so this is a roundabout versus local rotary comparison in terms of geometry, what the range is supposed to be, and these numbers, I don't know if you can see them, but they look much larger for a rotary than a roundabout. That's the standards we're gonna follow when we're designing either roundabout or rotary. So there are many benefits for the, again, roundabouts. Roundabout proving to be safer. The reason being is that it forces traffic to slow down and to enter the roundabout. And then we have, again, crosswalk for pedestrian is set to being about 1 vehicle length at least behind the approach. So a vehicle coming, it will approach the roundabout, and then the pedestrian can cross right behind it because the second vehicle behind has to stop. And that's why it's safer. Again, we talked about conflict points are much less in a roundabout than an intersection. And a typical two-lane suburban intersection, suburban roundabout, we can have up to 67% reduction in the number of crashes at the roundabouts. And again, it's sometimes you get the severity of the crashes. Now we're talking about if at an intersection the crash can result in injuries and other things, and at a roundabout it will reduce the severity of the crashes because, as I said, speed is it all comes down to speed. Speed is slower, and the nature of the crashes would be mainly property damage. Talking about the life cycle of a roundabout as opposed to an intersection. A signal's life cycle is up to 10 years about because of the technology changes, because of the material and the equipment. And so a roundabout is at least 20 years in life cycles. In terms of the ongoing maintenance of a roundabout, is very minimal. Just really to maintain some landscaping and other cleaning, if anything goes wrong. Single intersection, it costs at least $6,000 a year. That's given. And if anything breaks, again, definitely it would be the damage much higher. And if any equipment need to be replaced, then to be more expensive. So this is the kind of the proposed improvements. You have seen the displays and the layout for the roundabout at the in here, and then providing that 2 lanes of approach to the roundabout from this side, aligning the driveway of the University Ave Park, and also the extent of the project comes all the way down to what we call Ramp E, to provide a whole new painting and then shoulders, and then sidewalks as well. I mean, that's one of the issues. The sidewalks are not constantly continued. So you are walking, and then you will be walking on a sidewalk, and then all of a sudden you find a grass area. You have to walk in the grass area. So this approach will allow us to extend the sidewalk all the way for the project limits. There are some widening in this area, which is a steep decline in the area, and we're going to put the retaining wall. Then we don't encroach much on the private properties, and then we will put guardrail along the side to provide for safety. If vehicles, ended up getting off the road, then they don't just hit the wall. There will be a guardrail there. This is the the comparison in the level of service that we talked about between existing and proposed condition for the roundabout. The existing condition is the signalized intersection. The future condition, the proposed condition is really the roundabout. You can see that in the morning eastbound at the roundabout, which is heading to the left of the, or heading, looks like it's going north really, but it's really going westbound. This is the eastbound going south from Jarvis Street down toward the ramps. And the existing level of service is a C. That's for the entire approach, the left lane and the through lane. And under the roundabout, it will be a B, which is much better. The afternoon, in the eastbound, the level of service is E, and then for the roundabout is an A. And if you look at the westbound, now we're going kind of toward the north side, northwest, and the existing level of service is F, and then the proposed condition would be a B, and then the afternoon would be an F, and then for the roundabout would be a B. If I have a B level of service on that approach, and my traffic volume is being processed, so I will not have as much backup as I used to have in the past. So the driveway at Lindor Heights traffic will not back up to that point anymore. And then also between the traffic, you'll have ample time for a vehicle to make a turn. Some of the safety consideration John touched on, and to improve geometry, visibility, and safety. Conflict points reduction. Vehicle speed is the main cause of crashes. Reducing speed would be a huge benefit. And the access to University Park Apartments. We think it's really a better option for that access point. This is the roundabout, you have seen it. So there is the Lindor Heights. We're providing them with a little pocket turn lane to separate from I-141. You're going down the hill, and that will allow the vehicle entering to get off the traffic stream, wait there for acceptable gap, and then turn into the property. We are also we're tasked to provide an adequate acceleration lane on I-91, so that vehicles going on I-91 south can have ample space to merge into the main traffic at certain speed and then proceed safely. This is the Lindor Heights driveway. As you can see, this is the pocket turning lane that goes into the property. And then we're putting two median island there, kind of refuge island, that will provide separation from traffic. And then will allow a vehicle exiting to kind of, have space without being in the stream of traffic. This is the acceleration lane on I-91. We spoke about that. And traffic engineering, really, you can make the right judgment if you have the experience. If you have so many years experience in traffic, then things start to make sense, and then you try to make a good judgment about certain things. Not everything is, we rely on the computer. We use the computer as a tool to populate the computer with the data that we have, and then we try to analyze it. And one of the computer programs that we use is called VSIM. And I don't know if anybody heard of it. It does simulate the traffic for us in the future conditions. So it shows how the intersection will operate in the future condition. Not exactly 100%. I cannot guarantee like things will be working exactly the same. But within a level of margin of error, things will operate in that extent. So that gives us a comfort level to propose any changes. And then For VSIM, again, it's the visual. I don't know if you can see that. In some areas it will zoom in. This is the I-91, southbound, northbound. The limit of the project is ramp E, and then it goes up. This is kind of an overview visual. I have to tell you, it looks on my computer much clearer, but sorry, on this screen it does not. But we tried to zoom in. We kept this ramp on. This initially, in the prior proposals, we took it out, and then we proposed like a ramp, an on-ramp from here, and that was taken out. So you can see the crosswalks, the sidewalks, they continue on both sides in this area. And this is the Lindor Heights driveway. So you can see some people entering and exiting where they have proper gaps. So as we approach it, this is what we call westbound. You can see it back up. However, that back up, because they have 2 lanes now. Before we had 1,000 cars per 1 lane. Now we have 500 vehicles per 1 lane. And you can see the behavior of the vehicle, how they stop. If somebody in the roundabout, they yield for them. You can see that we have a large vehicle that's kind of coming off the ramp in here, and you can see how it will maneuver around the roundabout. So it will use that dark red area, which we call the apron. So the vehicle would use that apron, the large vehicle, the truck, would use that apron to proceed that way. Yeah, this is the large vehicle. You see, it drives right over the apron. So everything is provided space-wise. And that apron does not have to be used by a passenger vehicle. And then as we go more west of Jarvis, remember that left lane that used to back up all the way to Jarvis? That does not exist anymore. And that's consistent with what we call the level of service B or level of service A. Yeah, the queuing used to be all the way back here. So visually we can tell that this intersection is going to operate way much better and going to handle more traffic than that signalized intersection that exists there today. It's almost done. 1 second and we'll be done. There are some impacts resulting from the project. You want to speak to that?
So with the proposed improvements that we've shown here tonight, we do anticipate some impacts. There will be a large amount of fill that will be required to level out the proposed roundabout. The roundabout should be as flat as we can make it. And since it takes up a larger area, we'll need to fill that. And that fill will be supported by retaining walls on both the northeast and the southeast corners of that intersection. We also anticipate some right-of-way impacts at the corner in order to construct the retaining walls. There will be some temporary impacts for construction, as well as a couple small takings in order to create the roundabout, as well as some impacts widening the road in the vicinity of Lindor Heights in order to create those refuge islands, recreate the drainage swale that's on the north side of the road, and build some retaining walls as we cut into that slope on the west side of Lindor Heights. And the project schedule going forward, tonight is the public information meeting. We anticipate taking your comments, working with MassDOT, and developing a 25% design submittal sometime over the winter, over the next few months. Final design isn't anticipated to be done until spring of 2022. Final design will include the final bid documents as well as any right-of-way process that has to occur will have occurred by then. And we anticipate that construction will be starting in fall of 2023 on this project.
I just want to add one more thing. So this all, the passion and the discussion about the roundabout is not a done deal. This is kind of a step in the process, and then it all depends on feedback that we get from all of you. So it's really not, we're not proceeding 25% design without consensus on it.
Thanks very much. Walter, can you hear me okay? A little bit. I've press ganged a lighting technician here to turn the lights back on for us. He's done a great job. Thank you. So as Faisal just mentioned, this is not, we're not committed to this. We want to hear what you have to think about it. Roundabouts are somewhat often people are frightened of the idea of a roundabout because of our experience driving through rotaries. This is not a rotary. This is a slow speed, 20-mile-an-hour speed type of intersection. And they have a tremendous, typically, and I don't think these guys mentioned this, but typically there's a huge negative feeling with the public prior to the installation of a roundabout. Once they go in, it flips the other way, and there's overwhelming support for it because they work really well. So here we are now at the point where we need to hear from you. So if you could all come up, I apologize. Again, we're not really set up for this size crowd. And depending on what you think of this idea, maybe it works out for us. Oh yeah, we'd like you to come up to the mic, and if you could just tell us who you are, and if you could spell your last name for Walter.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's on.
I'm sorry. Stand by. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi, James Leahy, L-E-A-H-Y. Two questions. One is, how long is this process going to take? Not so much process just outlined, but the process
To build it?
to build it, design and build, I suppose. We're starting it now.
2 to 3 years.
And what are we going to do to alleviate the traffic that people are, when you guys are constructing this?
7 or 8 years from now.
How are we going to alleviate the traffic?
During
We're still alive.
there will be a traffic management plan. I can't tell you today that traffic won't be negatively impacted by the construction activities. However, we will guarantee a lane in each direction like there is today during the entire process.
I just have a concern because I think you guys are doing a project now at Agawam, right next to the Eastern States. I think the timing was completely wrong for that project. So I'm concerned about the timing of this project, how long it's going to last. But when will that report be done? The traffic will be
Design will be completed in spring of 22. Construction would begin in the fall of 23. We put it out to bid in the fall of 22. We'd award it over the winter, and the contractor would be out there in the spring.
Okay, I know a lot of people. My last question is, I have a lot of constituents up there, and I heard you're going to be, I heard you say taking of land. What property would you be taking? You know, what value would it give them?
I would leave that to Eric. to answer specific right-of-way questions. We do have some right-of-way plans with us, perhaps? No? We haven't developed that, we haven't developed the roundabout design to that stage.
Okay, so I'd like to see those because we have constituents here that possibly just lose land.
Are you a public official?
I am, yes.
Oh, can you tell us who you are?
I did.
Well, you told me your name. You should tell me your name.
City Council at large, former employee of MassDot.
There you go.
Very happy about their. Yeah, but I have a lot of constituents here, and I want to make sure that they're taken care of.
Great. Thank you for coming. Can I jump in on that? Oh, Rich, yeah.
So, again, this is a pre-25% design proposal. As we move a project ahead, there's a design stage in preparing the bid documents that will eventually be advertised for a contractor to construct the project. The 25%, if we go to 25% with this, we'll actually have another public hearing, a formal public hearing with the level of detail we've developed at that time, which will be more than we have tonight, which is almost a conceptual design. So that will include at least a more defined traffic management plan, which will probably have some sort of staging strategy where parts of the work will occur at one time while traffic is shifted to one side or the other, and that would be part of what we would present and discuss at the 25% stage when we get there.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Attorney Dan Glanville. I live at 33 Dixell Lane. And I just want to point out a few things that were open to the presentation. You said that you considered the crowd astounding. You also said that nobody knows better than you, referring to the crowd. You followed up by saying that we really want to hear your input because that is important. And I believe Faisal ended by saying that nothing would be done until we had consensus. So I thank you very much for putting the facts together and listening to the concerns of the residents that are impacted. I think when you consider any traffic remediation plan, you always consider what the causation is of it. And I think you'll see that primarily the causation of this is increased traffic. I think if you poll the people here at the public hearing, you will see that this is predominantly a Holyoke audience, because it is Holyoke that is impacted, whereas 90% of the causation comes from the town or city of East Hampton. If you take the time to look at Interstate 91, you will see that East Street in East Hampton has plenty of room for construction of ingress ramps to Interstate 91 that will give plenty of speed for people to get up to the proper speed before they impact people in Holyoke. In addition, we submit tonight that a predominant adage in the law is, did you come to the nuisance or did the nuisance come to you? I present here that the nuisance came to us, and you owe it to us to have a plan that meets our needs. You talked primarily about safety, and safety is an important factor. You mentioned that I'm going to call it a rotary, you can call it what you want, but I've been to the one in Northampton and it does work effectively. I've been to ones in Europe and they work effectively. The 2-lane rotary in West Springfield, Massachusetts is a disaster. So I'm not sure safety would be fully impacted with this. I live at 33 Dixell Lane, and Faisal, your computer map that showed my house not present in it was very helpful. But what it also did not do is say that a car is going to be coming around that rotary at 20 miles per hour. It will be entering the B lane, I believe, which will be the new ingress into 91. Starting at 20 miles an hour. Today, it is at 0 miles per hour. You will then have 2 lanes of traffic that will be competing to slow down to 1 lane of traffic. I guarantee you, for the stenographic record, that one of these vehicles will be in my backyard at some point. Without the construction of an adequate barrier, similar to the barriers I have seen across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts on Interstate 190 Interstate 290, Interstate 90, Interstate 495, and the Lowell Connector, all new construction which you can all tell me exists. How come there is nothing that exists here? Quite honestly, I'm not going to accuse you of it, but I'm sick of seeing highway plans and construction plans that redline the city of Holyoke. We need adequate construction plans that meet our needs so that going forward, every one of the residents has issue with safety, just as you do in all of the highways I have mentioned to you. And sent to you via certified mail for an ill-placed public hearing that occurred several years ago, which was not notified. Now, I love bicycles. I grew up on bicycles. Anyone who is the least bit sane who enters this area of traffic on a bicycle needs to have their head examined. Faisal also said that he wants to minimize the right-of-way impact on private property. I will tell you, without an adequate concrete device that will separate Woodmar Glen from this highway ramp and Lindor Heights from this highway ramp for noise reparation as well as safety of vehicles ending up in people's yards, you are doing a disservice to the Commonwealth and you are exposing them to future liability. I want to save time for other people because we probably will not be out of here until midnight. I thank you for your time. I know you have a very tough job, but you have answers to give to people, and I know you put a lot of work into this. I do public hearings for a living. It's not an easy task, but you need to answer the questions. You need to provide for safety, and you can't just yes people and construct this because it will result in further disaster and damage to property and life.
Thank you very much for your time.
Would you please spell your last name for me so I get it right?
Sure, Your Honor. G-L-A-N-V-I-L-L-E.
Glad you understand the relationships we have.
I'm sorry, G-L-A-M?
G-L-A-N, V as in Victor, I-L-L-E.
Thank you. And you mentioned you live on Dixon Lane?
I do.
Spell that.
It's in the plan, but it is also D-I-C. It is also D-I-C-S-A-L.
Right. Excuse me, if you could just put your thoughts down and send them to us as well.
I've done that. So
Oh, you've done that already? Okay.
I've done that. And not once has anyone had the courtesy of responding to me.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I encourage you to do it again, because we will respond.
Hi, my name is Matthew Burak. That's B-U-R-A-K. I live at intersection of East Hampton Road and Jarvis.
You don't have to bend down, just speak.
Yeah, just talk.
So the gentleman before me brought up, I work in the environmental field on the federal level for hydropower licensing. So I've done a lot of these meetings myself. And one thing we always look at when we try to determine whether or not to license a hydropower project are the alternatives. And the gentleman before me brought up the issue of where did the nuisance come from? It was living at that intersection for years now, it clearly comes from East Hampton. So in my view and recommendation, you need to look at that alternative that he laid out. And one other thing I look at is, let me just ask this one question. This project's receiving some federal funds.
Oh, yes, lots of
Okay.
federal funds. In
So-
fact, the entire construction is paid for with federal
Okay.
funds, except for maybe 10%.
Are you aware of what is termed environmental justice?
Yes,
Are you aware that Holyoke is designated by the state and the federal government as an environmental justice community?
yes,
Okay, so you are aware that you are required by federal and state law to analyze the effects of this project on the city and residents of Holyoke.
correct.
When will we see the results of that analysis?
When we perform it, we're at pre-25%, we're at conceptual design yet. We haven't actually chosen a design to advance. So once we have a design to advance, we will follow the process accordingly. We've done other environmental justice presentations in Holyoke. I'm looking to Rich to confirm that for me. No? Well, I've done them in district. We're familiar with the process. It'll
Getting back to that model,
Sir, please don't do that. You go in my head.
Yeah, you just stand up and talk.
Stand and speak normally, thank you. That's made for shorter people than you. That's all.
so the model and the forecast was for 10 years, right? Up into 2025, okay? Construction is going to begin in 2023. So that means this plan only can work for a year. So you're going to spend $6 million for something that may work in 1 year.
Well, that's not an accurate characterization.
You have no data projected past 2025 to rely on and make any inference on that.
But it's not that it stops working 10
You have
years
no
from
data
now.
to support that claim. Also, that model, when was that model run? When did you perform the VISA model, what you presented here?
The VISA, when did you generate the VISA? It's from the
Just
data
this
this
week?
year?
So did that include the change in the speed limit on East Hampton Road between the intersection and Jarvis Ave? It will, or has it?
It does, it reflects
It
postal speed.
reflects, okay. And the assumptions of that model, does that, is it, what are they based on? How people are supposed to drive or how people actually drive?
It's dependent on many factors, including the number of vehicles.
I understand that, but in terms of driver behavior, is that included in the
It
model?
does not take into account driving behavior.
Okay, so that's one very important aspect of this that needs to be examined, because for people, a model is only good as the data that you put in it. In other words, that if you put garbage in it, you're going to get garbage out.
Excuse me, are you assuming that we put garbage in that model?
I'm assuming you haven't looked at all the factors that could affect
Are
what
you
we.
a traffic engineer or an environmental?
I'm a biologist.
We're traffic engineers.
I understand it, but I deal with engineers all the time, and oftentimes they overlook stuff.
I just want to encourage everybody to give us constructive criticism instead of standing up and throwing darts. We're trying to get your opinions on.
I'm giving you an opinion on what I think you should look at. Those are my recommendations.
Okay, good.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thomas Peru, and
Can you spell your last name?
P-R-O-U-L-S. Hollis, H-O-L-L-I-S. And I live in Woodmart Glen, and my house is in the picture, and it's on the exit ramp of 91 in East Hampton Road. There's been construction over the years there where they have taken my property little by little, and it appears that they'll be taking more to make the roundabout. My concern would be, because we have culverts that are under 91, I'm sure you know that in your plans, but there's no like sewer that drains into it from 141, where the light is. So that area freezes up. And then the water ends up in my yard. And then there's more wetlands to the neighbors across from me, and as well as in Lindor Heights. But the noise barrier and how close do you think you will actually come to my house is my biggest concern.
So you're asking if we're going to put in a noise barrier. We would do a noise study to see if one is merited. And
I just don't want someone driving by
Yeah.
my kitchen window and saying, hey, she's got chicken for
Right.
dinner. You know,
most likely it might be merited.
yeah, you
Yeah.
could open a restaurant, I suppose. But
In addition, that's exactly the kind of comment we're looking for, because that's a very specific thing that we would probably not discover, is that you get water on your property from the roadway.
well, for 10 years, I had to fight with the state and
Yeah.
the city of Hoyoke
Okay.
because there's the culvert that comes from the light on 141 under the road,
Yeah.
passes by my property. And when they would come and trim the shrubs or whatever weeds, they just leave them in there.
No,
So-
clog it up.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Another good comment.
there's another culvert that comes under 91, both exit ramps, and ends up in that same ditch, only it's further away from my house.
Right.
So when you're plowing the roads and you're throwing all the snow over there, in the spring it's terrible. A lot of us get water in our cellars or all in our backyards. trees rot from the oil and whatever else is in there. But that's my concern, is the drainage, the noise barrier. And last time when they widened the road on 141, from the exit ramps up to the light by Jarvis Avenue, they took land and they never paid for it. So I would like to know more about that later. Okay? Yeah.
Appreciate your comments. I can guarantee that drainage will be improved with the project. Probably redo all the drainage in the roadways that we're touching, especially with the roundabout option. If that gets built, that will require a lot of new drainage.
Okay.
Yeah. The sound is...
I've had cars in my backyard.
Have you
Okay, I've
really?
lived in this
Wow.
house for 35 years plus.
Yeah.
And actually had cars that went up over the guardrail into the backyard, knocked down the swimming pool, a couple of trees, and they've come in both directions. So that's my concern.
Right. It's...
And I'm not a
Critical.
fan of the one in Northampton.
Oh, you're not?
Not at all.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you very much for your comment. Yes, ma'am.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second. Sorry, folks. It's my job to accurately record your comments and your questions because they're really important. Okay. That said, I need to ask everyone in this room, all of you and the panel, not to interrupt each other, not to make comments while someone else is talking, because if you both speak at once, I don't know who's saying what, and none of it gets in the transcript. So we're trying to make a legal document here that everybody can refer to. I need your help in that regard, okay? Don't interrupt each other. Let somebody finish. Even if you think you know where they're going, let them finish. Let them finish their question.
Thank you, Walter. I'm guilty of that. Yes, ma'am.
Mimi Panich, that's M-I-M-I-P-A-N-I-T-C-H. I am a Holyoke resident and I'm on the planning board. And I have a couple of process questions first. Now, I understand that the slides will be up on the website. And will the VISM presentation also be somewhere that we can look at it? Because for a great many of us, we're seeing this for the first time.
Sure.
And because of that, and because of the visibility issues, I think a lot of people will want to study what we've seen tonight, go back and really look at that simulation, and only then will we be in any position, a lot of us, to offer reasonable comments to you. So my next question is, what's the comment period? At what point do comments close?
They don't close. Because this is not a public hearing, we don't have an end date. We welcome your comments, written and tonight. Is there someone from Holyoke here? All of us. No, I mean an elected official who can tell us what they're going to put on the website. We'll find out for you, but I would assume that if we're putting the presentation on, we can put the VISM on. There we go.
So I've been looking for somebody to show me a VISM presentation for years now. I'm so
It's a
sorry.
nice one, actually.
Yeah, and I have one substantive question, which is, I think it's fairly common knowledge that if you build more traffic capacity, it tends to attract more traffic. And this looks like you're in fact building substantially more capacity than we've had in the past if this goes through. And has there been any thought to the likely impact of 141, which in that stretch is a beautiful rural road, which I think you would see a lot of opposition to widening and turning into a standard state way?
I would ask either Rich or Faisal to address the traffic question about added capacity brings more traffic.
The anticipation is not going to attract more traffic. The goal is to process the high volume that exists today. We're minimizing the delays and improving safety at those specific intersections.
What about the, I think, fairly well-known phenomenon where people avoid a given route because they know it's backed up? They find alternatives. When the route is no longer known to be impossible to navigate, they switch their habits and they start using it. So logically, you get more traffic over there. Is that not a thing the traffic engineers see?
That's a great observation. And the issue is that 91, for example, was to be back up, and then people would be enticed to come on 141 as a cut through, then it would be logical to think that not to attract off the 91. But 91 itself is really, it has ample capacity for people to travel on it and to come on 141 to travel on it.
Yeah, as you can see, all of this is hovering around issues of, is this going to significantly alter the neighborhood, which I suspect many of our questions are basically directed toward. But from there, I will look forward to studying the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Tom, do you remember what the gentleman over there said? Because I couldn't hear him. The gentleman over there,
Oh.
remember what he said?
Do you mind coming up to the mic and repeating what you said so Walter can get it?
The question was whether or not the city would post the presentation. I can speak on behalf of the DPW and the planning department.
Who are you here with?
Bob Parent, city engineer.
Can you spell your last name?
Yes, it's a different spelling. It's P-E-I-R-E-N-T.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
And it'll either be in the planning department page or the DPW page or both.
Great. Great. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for your presentation. It's hard to put them together.
So can you identify yourself?
My name is Press Macy, M-A-C-Y, not the store.
First name?
Press, P-R-E-S,
Thank you.
Preston. I live in Holyoke, on Shaman, 72 Shaman. Generally speaking, I'm very much in favor of roundabouts or circle merging. There are usually a couple of problems associated with them. My son destroyed my car with one of them. If you're stopped waiting for traffic to clear on your left, you're looking hard over your shoulder. And then the car in front of you doesn't do what you expected it to do, and you hit it. So usually the size of the roundabout affects the angles that you have to look over your shoulder. And I'm getting older, so that's becoming more aware of my own. And I know that the site will influence the size of the roundabout. In Millbury, at Route 146, they put a roundabout down there. It's really, really badly done. They put two of them in, so it's a figure eight, kind of like ice skating. And the trucks just can't navigate that. So if you made it large, I agree that the speeds would increase, which is not desirable, but people could then merge and get in and out easily. And if it's small, such as the one in Northampton or the one that's by the farms there in Atkins Farm, that's a double actually, and it's sort of confusing. The advantage of those, and I think you mentioned it, is that curbs are not going to be right angled. They're going to be ramps so that they can be used as a safety valve, if you will. But I would encourage you, and I'm with the people here who don't want to lose the aspects and the ambiance that they have, but a larger roundabout seems to me is less problematic than a smaller one because of the sighting angles, because of the approaches, and because of the ability for larger vehicles to navigate. So I thank you for this again, and I would encourage you to do that difficult balancing act between the size, its purpose, and its impact. And finally, just as a comment, while I'm encouraged that you're looking at Holyoke, Route 9 going up into Amherst is such a torturous thing. It seems like that might have been a higher priority at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macy. We have lots of work out there to do. Welcome.
My name is Dexter Guess, G-E-S-S, and I live on Bemis Road.
Can you spell that?
B-E-M-I-S. This is a minor part of what you're about to do, but right now we have an issue. Route 141 crosses over my street down to Route 5. And all those people from East Hampton and all those people going home at night from Route 5 decided to use Bemis Road. We have a speeding issue. We have 900 cars a day, no, 900 cars a week crossing our street. This project is going to make it worse. But this, I know the project is a long way off, but it's a consideration that needs to be thought about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again. No, you. Sorry.
Hi, my name is Carrie Dumbaugh. That's K-E-R-R-Y. D like David. U-M like Mary. B like boy. A-U-G-H. I've had to do that a lot. And I live at 23 Dixell Lane, so I'm happy to know somebody who also lives on my street, or to meet them. I have a comment and two questions. The comment is, I think Faisal showed us this wonderful video of the Con Street Rotary, and I don't have a problem with that, but that is, I would say that that's a very different situation. That's a one-lane rotary in a commercial area where you're going into heavily populated streets. You're proposing a two-lane rotary in a residential area, and I think those things are very different. So that's my comment. My first question, and I promised Rich Massey that I would ask this, when I popped into his office totally unannounced the other day, and he was nice enough to see me. It was, I really appreciate, because I know that you're all doing God's work, and this is a thankless task. But the question is, how many accidents have there been? We've heard people say, well, we need to keep accidents from happening. So how many accidents have there been? I've lived on that road for only 2.5 years, but Rich promised me he would have that information.
Yes, I have some information. Sure. So I looked at the intersection area right where the roundabout is proposed at the ramps, and since 2012, there's been 55 crashes there, and if I can find the chart here, I can tell you how many injury crashes there were. So that's...
And you're talking right at the end? I'm sorry.
That's right at the in the intersection area, University Apartments driveway, and some distance either side of the intersection where people might have rear-end crashes. So it's 55 crashes in 7 years. It's about seven crashes a year, and 18 of them were injury crashes or unknown. 37 were property damage.
Okay.
And then there's other crashes that happen away from where the actual traffic signal is, between like Old Jarvis Ave and down to where the split of East Hampton Road and East Hampton Road West are. And that was another, let's see, 28 crashes in the same time period from January 1st, 2012 until the latest crash that's available in our crash database. So that's about 4 crashes a year, and 23 of those were property damage only, and 5 had non-damage.
Okay, so this is going to be in the record then, right?
Yes,
In the
it will.
transcript? Great, thank you for that. I'm not sure that a two-lane rotary will reduce those crashes, especially given the mountain road and its nature and how much traffic there is there. My last question is, you had mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure who it was, that some of the problems, I think it may have been you, sir, were signal problems, that there was vegetation, that there were no signal backlights, and that there was no emergency vehicle preemption. And presumably this is one of the reasons for this project, or among the reasons. So I'm wondering, why wasn't the vegetation taken care of, the backlights put in, and the emergency vehicle preemption?
If the signal is designed, that's what would occur. I mean, I think the vegetation needs to be cut regardless, and it's good that that came out tonight, so our maintenance people can get out there and do it right away. But the other improvements to equipment and so on, the backlighting and the preemption would be added if the signal concept is advanced instead of the runaway. Again, we're just trying to get your opinion.
Yeah, it would seem to be less than $6 million.
Well, a full-blown signal design would also expand, probably add lanes and so on. They're expensive as well, probably more, well, comparable.
That is something that we could probably look at with the initial.
I'm sorry, Bob, you said that again.
That's something that we can look at to improve to put back in time, blood clear the brush. That's something that we can do.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear you speak up. It's Mr. Long, right? Okay, thank you.
Is it fair to say this is a high crash location based on that? Do you have that data here?
No, it doesn't rank as one of the top crash locations in the region. Each region has their own crash tracking, and for the Pioneer Valley region, this is not one of the top crash locations.
Good to know, thank you. Yes, sir.
Arnold Jaffe, resident of Holyoke.
I'm sorry, you said it again?
J-A-F-F-E.
And your first name?
Arnold.
Arnold?
Arnold.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question. You said that the comment period is open indefinitely, but the sheet you passed out says that we have 10 days after the hearing.
This isn't the hearing, this is a public information meeting. We want your input, so
Well, I
feel free to
understand, I
send it to us.
understand that, but I just,
Go ahead.
I understand that, but is this 10 days? What, and if it isn't, then why is it on there? That's one question. The other question I have pertains to, I don't know which one of your mock-ups or designs there, not to the roadway, the section of East Hampton Highway that's in question now, but the section of East Hampton Highway that is the exit off 91 North, okay? Because on your map there, or whatever you want to call that thing, you show what is now a two-lane, one-way roadway as being a two-lane roadway. If you're coming north on Route 91 and get off, it now shows there being a two-lane highway that you're getting off because you have an arrow pointing in each direction on your mock-up. If that's incorrect, then fine. But if it's not incorrect, then maybe you could explain to us what it means.
Can you guys elaborate on that?
Gentlemen, want to bring that right up to the microphone so we can hear you talk? Please.
We'll reiterate whatever they were talking about.
By the way, folks, you know that these people will stay here as long as you need them to after the presentation.
That's right.
We'll answer all your questions at the boards after we're done.
Perhaps I should, have you figured it out, guys? All right, well, we'll leave that until after the formal part of our, and you guys can handle that question separately. Walter brings up a good point. We'll stay here as long as you'll allow us to, or would like us to be here after this formal part of this is done, to answer specific questions at the drawings. So yes, this gentleman in the good-looking golf shirt there, or this gentleman, yeah, you were the sports shirt. You're waiting a while.
So my name is Juan Anderson Burgos. I'm Ward 6 Counselor in Holyoke.
Spell your name.
Yep, Juan, J-U-A-N. Last name is Anderson, A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N hyphenate, Burgos, B-U-R-G-O-S. My concern is, you're very welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. All of these people live in Holyoke, right? And you gentlemen don't. And what you need to understand is that their concerns is going to affect them day to day for, God knows, 2-3 years, correct? So what we need to do is think about how we're going to plan this. because it's going to affect us all. So we're trying to figure out what kind of impact that we're looking at. So are we thinking about the people of Holyoke, or are we just thinking about people in general who come in and out of Holyoke? We need to think about the people in Holyoke who live here, who pay taxes, right? So what we need to look at is exit 17. From what I'm hearing is part of it is going to be closed. Is that correct? Is that people exiting from 91 coming into Holyoke southbound, or are we talking about people going northbound?
I think all the same movements will exist.
While construction is happening? Because I want to make that clear, because these, like I said, it's going to impact not only...
One lane in each direction, just as it operates today, will be in operation during the construction phase.
Okay, so that...
But there will be impacts. I mean, we'll have equipment moving
Of
around
course,
and so on.
which is going to shift the traffic to the other side of Holyoke, like Soldier's Home.
Perhaps, yeah. If there's another option, yeah.
Born and raised in the city, trust me, I know how to get in and out of these jams, but a lot of people will not. And it's going to create an issue. And what I'm trying to do is not have the impact so much. You understand? Now, another thing, as you guys were speaking, you guys were saying since 2007, correct me if I'm wrong, you said since 2007, there were 55 accidents.
No, the last 7 years.
Oh, the last 7 years? Okay, so the last 7 years, there was 55 accidents. But what we need to look at too, what were the weather conditions? Because when you bring accidents to play, you have to look at the area, the kind of weather we were having, because that also says something about what kind of accidents we had, correct? So all of this information is really well, we deserve to hear every single part of it, and not just so that it can help your case, and another thing, we have to also look at East Hampton. Did we look at East Hampton, by the way? Because that's where a lot of the issues are happening. You ever been to East Hampton? Have you been to East Hampton?
Yeah, I come here all the time.
Okay, so then you would know
I did a project
that a
in
lot
East
of the
Hampton.
issues when you're going up and down that mountain, that's a lot of the traffic flow coming in and out of the city.
Yes.
Those people really don't have, they can drive all the way down to Route 10, or they can cross over to Route 5, but they prefer to get onto the highway, they prefer to go up the mountain.
Okay.
And people coming off the highway going down the mountain, that's another thing. Did we look at that area? We have to look at the whole map. You see what I'm saying? Because this is really going to impact one huge portion of the city. It's right there, Universal Park. These are families. These are people that go to work every morning. These are people that have to evaluate how they're going to, do their normal routines. Can you imagine waking up in the morning and saying, oh God, for 3 years, this is what I'm going to have to do. For 3 years, this is what I'm going to have to tell my kids to do. For 3 years, this is how I'm going to handle with my wife, with my spouse. These are things that are going to impact every day for these citizens.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I'm looking at. As a city councilor anyway, thank you very much for listening.
I've been informed, by the way, we will stay here inside until 8:30, which is when we have to leave. So we have until 8:30.
Who told you that? Oh.
When the meeting was set up,
Oh, okay. I misspoke. I thought we had the room as long as we needed it. If you have more fun, if you'd like us to come back, we can come back. But we've got another half hour anyway.
On the clock, it's not bad. I will not take more than 2 minutes. Bob St. Lawrence, STLEWRENC, President of Holyoke. A couple comments and a couple questions, and thanks for putting this on tonight. Very informative. The comments, one had to do with the cycling, and I'm an avid cyclist, and I'll be quite honest with you. You don't need to worry about anybody riding up or down Route 141. You will get killed. You will absolutely get killed. The other comment was made about after the improvements are made, would you expect more traffic? I live on the end of Homestay Avenue in the Blueberry Hill section of the city, and you just did a monster job down there off 91. And I'll be quite frank with you, the traffic has increased incredibly for people coming off 91 and on 91 going north and south on Homestead Avenue. It's a disaster. It's an F, absolute F, morning and night. And one of the things that causes that are the signals on the on-ramps going on 91 south and on 91 north. There's been a litany of accidents, and the traffic there, when those lights are red, my thought, just a thought, would be maybe those lights on the on-ramps should only be red if someone is crossing the street. They shouldn't be automatically red. It backs the traffic all the way back to the intersection and up Homestead Avenue. It's quite the mess. Okay, so, and questions. I wonder why. I mean, a lot of people talk about the traffic coming from East Hampton, and it is incredible. Why there would not be an I-91 south entrance somewhere between Holyoke and East Hampton? I don't know. And then there's, you know, you got the north, but people coming up the mountain, they have to go all the way through the city, down to Route 5, take a left, and then go back around. And I think that's part of the traffic buildup for the people coming over the mountain. But they're not Holyoke folks, you know? Right. There are a lot of East Hampton folks there. And the other question I might throw out is, I wonder if there was any thought to widening 91 south an additional lane. I think that would help you guys, it would certainly help the folks in the city, especially getting on 17, coming from Route 5 up Barron, hitting that quick left and going past the Soldiers Home. And it seemed like there's enough property there without widening bridges, actually, which would probably, you know, increase the cost by several $1 million. But yeah, just, you know, a couple of thoughts. So thanks for coming out tonight. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate your comments and questions. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
My name is Gary Jodin, Jodin. I live at 60 Lindor Heights here in Holyoke. And first of all, we're doing a $6 million project, from what I understand, is traffic flow and safety.
Yeah.
Safety for 55 accidents that happened over the last 75 years, which some of them probably weren't due to the traffic flow. Probably due to somebody driving too fast or slippery roads or something like that. So we're going to spend $6 million today, which by the time we get to do this project might be $12 million. So we're going to do that for traffic flow, to appease some people that live in East Hampton that are going to be 5 minutes later for dinner, coming from work, traveling through Holyoke, where we live, and pay taxes. Now, I've heard everybody talk about the rotary. I lived at the roundabout, whatever you want to call it, rotary roundabout. We call it a roundabout. Two-lane roundabout. When you have somebody coming up the hill from one lane, goes into two. The people in the right lane are supposed to get on 91. The people going over the mountain into East Hampton should be in the left lane, going on the inner part of the roundabout, crossing over to the right lane to get off and go into, continue on 141 west. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. In the mod, I saw the truck in the inner lane exit onto Route 91 south in front of a car in the right lane. That was in the model.
Okay.
If you look at the model. So, and you're going to get people that do that. My biggest problem is, and I think a lot of people here, is trying to get out of Lindor Heights. I have sat at the end of the street trying to get out of Lindor Heights at between 4 and 6 o'clock, and I've counted 35 cars come up that hill, would not let you up. The only way I got out is with the traffic light up the street at the 141 interchange there at 17. When the traffic light turned red, the car backed up to Lindor Heights, and if somebody didn't stop in the box in front of the street, you could get out.
Right.
Now, tonight coming here, traffic was backed up, and there was a truck and a car in the box. I couldn't get out and take a left. Now, you want to add 2 lanes there. I've been living here for not my whole life, but my wife has been here longer than me. But I would not dare, with a traffic island out there, try to cross 1 lane and stop halfway across the street with cars coming up the hill the way they do, and try to get out and take a left to go down 140. It is absolutely ridiculous. I believe an on-demand traffic light with the rotary in conjunction, where it gave us 15 to 30 seconds to get out of Lindor Heights, would help immensely, rather than some island, because now you're taking 1,000+ cars an hour,
Right.
and you're going to increase the traffic flow without a traffic light there. They're just going to keep going by, and the inconsiderate people who don't let you out will not let you out. I don't care how many islands or how many, whatever you want to call it.
Right. Yeah. Median.
I would call it a kamikaze lane to get in between me, because I won't put my vehicle out in that lane with the way they come up the hill.
No, it's a great
And
comment.
even if I did get halfway out, the people coming down the hill now, if you put the new ramp on the bottom, like they talked about, you would have traffic coming from both ways. And actually, coming out of Lindor Heights to take a left, you can't see the cars coming down the street because the lane is filled on going westbound. You can't see the eastbound cars coming out unless you nose out far enough. And if somebody stops to let you out, sometimes you even got to wait for the cars coming down. So my biggest concern would be getting out of Lindor Heights, and it's probably a lot here. And I think an on-demand, if you go through, which you probably will with your rotary or whatever you got to do, to help the people in East Hampton get to dinner 5 minutes earlier, would help immensely with an on-demand light. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you. My name is Mary Jo Maychak. Mary, space Joe, M-A-I-C-H-A-C-K. And I've lived at 58 Longfellow Road for 12 years now. One of my concerns is the character of this area of Holyoke. Because Holyoke has very obvious and very deep economic needs and pains, not only is this an aesthetically lovely part of the city that helps us to attract people to live there, but also collectively, the housing values in Woodmark Glen and Lindmar are very serious in proportion to what the rest of the city is able to do at this point in its life. Somebody would have exact figures for this, so forgive me if they're not right exactly on target, but I heard that some 3/4 of the residents of Holyoke are renters, and so this is a significant treasure, not just for us personally, and it is that, it will be very affecting us, but also as a way of financially feeding the city's needs through property taxes. And right now, the city is considering 2 new schools. So I lived with my husband on Homestead on 202 for 12 years, and we loved Holyoke and decided we'd take a big shot. It was a big stretch for us. We're both self-employed artists. That's all right, we'll do that. But to live in Woodmark Glen has been lovely. If we put in a much larger number of lanes increasing, I could see where that might definitely increase the flow of traffic. So from that point of view, all of the studies, which I appreciate very much, make a lot of sense. If you're a heart patient, you'd want that clot to get around that like a stent. But I do agree with the people that say that this is initiating from East Hampton and that Mountain Road artery is still going to be skinny. But my question is, what can you tell us about how this kind of change, how it would affect property values? How has it affected other places' values? Do you have a bead on that?
I can't give you any numbers or anything, but I can say that where we improve traffic flow, I would hazard a guess that property values go up. When we shrink the queues, like roundabouts tend to do, miraculously in a lot of cases, and it makes it easier for people to get out of that neighborhood in the middle there.
Lindor.
Yeah. Lindor,
Yes.
Right. It could, we think it will alleviate the trouble people are having getting out of that neighborhood and into that neighborhood.
Yes.
Like the gentleman before you spoke of, that fellow over there. We think this improvement would probably have a positive effect on the surrounding area. Not dismissing, though, the impacts to the widening and the changing character that the project might bring. However, roundabouts are they're not traffic lights, they're not electronic, they're often landscaped in the middle, they're actually fairly attractive as far as roadways go. And as I mentioned at the beginning, before we started all the presentation questioning, typically when roundabouts go in, there's a real negative push at the beginning. People don't think they're going to be a good idea. And then it's like 90 to 10 against at the beginning. After they go in, it's the other way around. It's like 90 to 10 in favor of it once it's gone in.
Yes, I've heard that, and that makes a lot of sense. When I picture, if I imagine myself as somebody selling or buying in this area now, and it depends, the devil's in the details on how it actually comes out.
Right.
Because if I just abstractly say, picture moving to a lovely neighborhood where there are 4 lanes going into a highway, that's going to be a very much less attractive thing potentially as well. Just as, there were days where there was no 91 and now the noise level has increased phenomenally in just in the 12 years that we've been there. So, but also in terms of the whole city, my last point is again that these houses pay top property taxes and have not been complaining about that, but there is a limit for everyone.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to
It's a terrific
be
comment
heard.
and a real valid concern. Appreciate it.
Ms. Benchak, I'm sorry, before you leave, you mentioned you lived on Woodmore? No, Woodmore, Lamp. Can you spell Woodmore? M-A-R.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's the neighborhood.
I see, thank you very much.
Thank you. We've got 15 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Beth Brogle, B-R-O-G-L-E. And I am a Holyoke resident, and I've been a real estate agent here for 33 years.
Okay.
And if you don't think for 1 minute that a double-lane road on each side isn't going to impact real estate values, then something's wrong up here, because it will, most definitely. One of the problems I think that a lot of the people are having here, and Rich is from Holyoke because he and I were in high school together, but are the rest of you from Holyoke? You grew up in Holyoke. Thank you. We have a situation now where our city is doing much better in a lot of places. A lot of places it isn't. The taxpayers are burdened. They're being asked to be burdened even further with new schools. And Lindor Heights, Woodmark Glen, Scott Hollow, Bemis Heights are being, and then further down, Homestead Avenue, all these neighborhoods are being used by people who come and go through our city to go someplace else. And I think that's wrong. I really don't feel, I mean, what, we have 40,000 people not a lot of taxpayers. You're gonna come in here, you're gonna change this, you're gonna take Matt Burek's front yard, you're gonna put a rotary in front of Longfellow Drive. I don't even believe it. 2 lanes getting out of Dixell and Lindor, I think you should put in East Hampton. That's the problem. I don't see anybody starving down there. The traffic does move. I'm sure some of those accidents were definitely weather related. It's a mountain. But I am totally opposed to a roundabout, which, by the way, have you seen the one in Northampton? No one's cut the grass there since they put it in. The weeds are that high. And a double lane one at that sounds more like a commercial venue. This is a neighborhood. Yes, the traffic is busy there, but I don't think it's the place for it. And I honestly don't think that anybody in this room really feels the same way.
All right.
Thank
Good.
you.
Hi, good evening.
Paul Pannier, Paul, Pannier. Actually, Director of Operations for Tinkle Management, we run University Park.
Okay.
So my main concern at this point is what kind of delay burden is going to be placed on our tenants of University Park trying to get into this double lane rotary. Is there any idea how that's going to impact them getting into that thing every day?
Let me ask our traffic engineers over here, am I right?
In our assessment, we think it's much easier to get off the way we are proposing it, as a 90-degree approach, because they can stay in the outer lane and then they can go in either direction. And I think it will be much safer for them than the current configuration now of the driveway. Because when you try to exit behind the stop line, it's not very safe to turn left. Going right is much easier.
But right now we have a traffic signal, obviously that triggers every time someone goes into that entrance.
If that's part, it has to be part of the signal. If there's a signal there, it has to be part of the signal, and then they can have their own phase. That would be the most efficient, the safest way.
So that describes the signal option, but what about the roundabout?
As I was saying, the way we have it, they can exit and enter. It's very, at the 90 degrees, they have a line of sight, and they can exit in any lane, the left lane or the right lane.
Right.
All right. And I guess I don't know the land taking issue. I guess there's obviously we don't know at this point how that's affecting the front of our site. I know there's some redirection of traffic in the front of our site to one lane to get into that roundabout.
I think we can say, all we can really say about the impacts today is that the roundabout has a bigger footprint than a signal, but maybe the difference isn't that great. But we haven't designed them, so we can't really say.
And later on, I have many questions you actually
Terrific.
answered tonight, but I'll leave them with you if you have answered many.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Carrie Dunbar again. You already have me on your list. Just want to say one thing. Again, I agree with what Beth Grogel said. And the artist, Mary Jo, I think it was. Lindor Heights right now is surrounded by 91 and its ramps. We're basically living in a roundabout already. So to have yet another roundabout encroaching on Lindor Heights that just seems beyond the pale. I object to that in case you can't tell.
Point taken, thank you. Yes, sir.
Ray Ahern, Ahearn, 23 Dixell Lane. Sir, I think you said 90% of the funding for this project will come from the federal government.
For the construction, yes.
For the
Typically
construction.
80 to 90% is paid by the federal government.
So if some of us have concerns about this project, who at the federal government level should we contact?
Federal Highway Administration, I guess, in Cambridge. But MassDOT is charged with the, yeah, Rich, please.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So the funds that are used for this, the federal funds, are programmed to projects in the Pioneer Valley region by a board made up of regional officials, which includes mayors and chairs of select boards. And Mayor Morris is currently a member of that Metropolitan Planning Organization that makes the decisions on which projects get to use the federal funds that are available in the Pioneer Valley region for the road projects here. So that's the organization that makes the programming decisions. And again, you're always welcome to contact any of your elected officials that you want.
I'm sorry, gentlemen, you're both speaking at once. Would you say what you were saying?
I was saying, I'm just clarifying what Rich was saying. That's the group to contact. We have concerns about how the federal money is going to be spent. Okay, thank you.
That's a great question. Thank you for bringing it up. And Rich, thanks for clarifying. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ginny Reed, Ginny, R-E-I-D. I live in Lindor Heights. I've been there about 22 years. And again, I agree with Dan and Beth Brogel about our situation in Lindor Heights. I don't see how we're going to make a left turn to get out of there. I think the roundabout's a lovely idea, but it doesn't work for the residents. Last week, a truck coming up 141 from Northampton Street on the Holyoke side pulled down the electrical cord that drapes across it, right? And I think he took down 2 telephone poles. So the highway, that 141 was closed. That was the first time in a long time I was able to get into Lindor Heights. I couldn't believe it. It was wonderful. And it was like the old days. I really, really want you to consider putting an exit between 17 and 18 for East Hampton people. I just went into East Hampton yesterday. They paved the roads, but that town is impossible to drive through when people are parking on both sides of the street. You have East Street that people can access up there off of Route 5. I really want you to consider that because this is not going to work for us. It'll work for I don't know who, but not for us, okay? Thank you.
Bill Welch, W-E-L-C-H, Martin Street. I think one of the gentlemen here answered his own question. The reason there aren't 2-lane roundabouts is the way you have that drawn, and you heard the reaction from this crowd, it ain't gonna work. You cannot have 1 lane of traffic to 2 lanes of traffic, 2 lanes of traffic going through the roundabout, hoping some are gonna get onto 91 and some are gonna go over to Jarvis, and then how do you get them back out onto the rest of 141? It isn't gonna work. And as far as the design of the roundabouts, have you ever really been behind a PVTA bus or a tractor trailer going through some of your roundabouts? The one up at Atkins, take a look. The reason there's gravel all over is the trucks coming out of the lane quarry, as they're going around, go up onto the side and their load tips out. The buses going around the rotary at Coons Street are always up on the rotary. Roundabout works if you're a car, not a truck. And how do trucks get to East Hampton? Up 141.
Thanks.
Excuse me, Mr. Welch, before you go. You mentioned lane quarry.
Lane Quarry.
Can you spell the name?
Lanequarry.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We just have one final thing.
So, Dan Glanville back. If you put an exit in East Hampton, your concern might be that people would still come to Holyoke. You solve that by closing entrance B on 91, because everyone from Holyoke gets on from Route 5 or elsewhere. Close that, and have people in East Hampton would therefore not have an easy alternative by coming to Holyoke.
Anyone else? This works out perfect. 8:27. Thank you very much for coming. Our contact information is in the handout. Appreciate you being here. Thank you.